Hey, Shoes. How you doing?
Hey buddy, how you been?
Yeah, good. I'm excited for this today.
How are you now?
Yeah, I saw you do this one at Manny's Dining. It,
Did you?
yeah, and I thought it was good. I'm having
Well, I'll
trouble.
try not to suck too badly. I'm getting a little bit rusty sitting here at home.
So I'm sure you're not that rusty. It's no, I find it's good. So I'm looking forward to it.
Good. Thanks for being here. How you holding up?
Oh yeah, doing it, doing my best. It's yeah, we'll see.
All right, guys. Today we have the one, the only John Schumacher, aka Shoes. John Schumacher, you let's learn a little bit about yourself. What we know about you is you've been in real estate your whole life.
42 years.
42 years, man. So you started when you were 3. That's cool.
Right on.
A little bit older than me. You've been in real estate you've been in real estate for 43 years. You were what you call SOB, yeah?
I am an SOB. A lot of people would attest to that. I'm a son of a broker. My mom and dad both sold real estate back here in Champaign, Illinois, home of the Fighting Illini.
Booyah, booyah. All right. Your journey with real estate was, when did you get into real estate?
I graduated from Illinois in 1977. And I graduated with a degree in leisure studies, and it was appropriate. That was the appropriate name for how I approached college. I was a recreation supervisor with the Elmhurst Park District in 1977 or 8, making $13,700 a year. I got married, decided I needed to make more money. So in 1978, my parents convinced me that if I was serious, that I needed to move back to Champaign. And that's when I went to real estate full time.
Got it. Got it. You're in the RE/MAX Hall of Fame. Is that correct?
You know it's correct. Bow down, baby. Yeah, early in my career, I was with RE/MAX. I actually owned a couple of RE/MAX offices. Built those up. I was in the RE/MAX Hall of Fame. Mike Ferry superstars, Howard Britton, all of that, right?
Yep.
Never sold 100 units in a single year. Got close.
Okay.
Sold those offices off. Took over a large Coldwell Banker regional company. We were the number 7 Coldwell Banker affiliated company at the time. After, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, and this is like 2000 or so, decided I wanted to go back to school to find out what it'd be really like to show up for class. So I went back, got my MBA. Coldwell Banker created a position for me as their executive business consultant to their 25 largest affiliates. And so for 6 or 7 years, I traveled around the country, consulting, growing, working with primarily the owners of Coldwell Banker's largest affiliate firms. I was a CRS instructor. I was doing a little bit of teaching, coaching along the way. And then I got this call out of the blue, quote unquote, from this company called Keller Williams 7 or 8 years ago. It changed my life.
There you go. So now you are the regional director, right, of Keller
I am.
Williams for the regional, and you are the operating principal for Keller Williams Chicago Lincoln Park.
I heard some amazing cats.
So, hey, Shoes, I can tell you personally that, you've given this talk before, and it's impacted my life greatly. So I'm really looking forward to you speaking here. So I just want to thank you for your time and taking time out of your busy schedule to share with us. And I'm really just going to turn the reins over to you and let you present to us for the next 40 minutes.
That could be risky,
I know, but I'll guide you in case if you get a little nervous, don't worry, I'm here for you.
I know you'll be there for me, and I will say that single-handedly, you, Joe, are one of the people that have made my journey in and through Chicago worthwhile. You're one of the more amazing people that I've encountered in my journey, and it's an honor to be here and to be in your world. So go away.
I appreciate it, and I'll pay you later for that.
All right. First of all, I'm going to see if I can share my screen. And it's not giving me my options. Hang on. Well, this is fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's not letting me connect with my iPad like it would when I was.
You are a technology master.
That's right.
Stop it.
You got this.
Stop it, Ann Rosen. There's something the way this is set up, Joe, so that I can't share my whiteboard screen.
Okay. Let me change that.
Let's try maybe even making me a co-host, and maybe it'll let me, huh?
Okay. Yeah. Why don't you get started and I'll work on it from my end. You have it? There you go.
No, that's your paid campaigns. That's not what we want.
We could share the screen.
Let me unplug it, plug it back in. Bear with me.
Okay.
I actually experimented with this beforehand.
Shoes, why don't you give us the overview while you're working this out?
I will do so. Maybe I can do this even without. Maybe I can do this without drawing it as I go, which would be really amazing, right?
Yeah.
Here's the deal. I read this book called The One Thing a few years ago, and I read it and thought that it was interesting. Thought that there was some good information in there, and thought that that I actually knew most of what was contained in it. And for whatever reason, I can't even remember why I read it again a couple years ago. I thought, wow, this book was written especially for me. And along the way, I developed a little bit of a relationship with one of the co-authors, Jay Papasan. And 3 falls ago, Jay reached out to me and said, hey, we're doing our first couples goal setting retreat. And I think you and your wife would really benefit from it. And so I went back to Carol, the amazing Stackleface, and said, hey, there's this workshop coming up for The One Thing. Someday that'd be maybe a good thing for us to go to. I wasn't really serious, and we just let it die, right? And for whatever reason, Jay called me a couple weeks later and said, hey, I think you and Carol, he said, this is the most valuable thing that my wife, Wendy, and I have ever done together. So I went back to Carol and I said, you know what? I think he's telling me that we really should go, and we went. And we sat through the workshop, learned a concept that I'm going to share with you guys today called Goal Setting to the Now, and it changed our lives. It changed each of our individual lives, personally and professionally. It changed our relationship as a couple. It's changed the trajectory of my business career since then. And that's why I like to share it, because I believe in it that much. The way most of us create goals is the same way that Carol and I did together, right? We would begin with this notion of, what do I want to do this year? What do I want to accomplish this year? And usually those goals are they're based upon what I did last year. So at best, they're going to be maybe incrementally better than what last year's goals were. If I did 24 units as a real estate salesperson, I might say, I want to really stretch and do 35 units this year. The other issue with going year by year, as most of us do in setting goals, is that they may not be connected. I may say, wow, this year I really want to focus on my health. I'm going to run a marathon. And next year I may say, I want to be more at peace. So I'm going to really work on meditation. The next year I might say, I'm going to build a team and I'm going to learn the Millionaire Real Estate Agent. Those one year might or might not lead to the next in terms of success. And so what I learned in this goal setting to the now process is that instead of beginning with where I'm at and looking forward 1 year, how about I reach all the way out into the future to someday and ask myself the question, what would a perfect life look like for me someday? Let's see if I can pull something up here that might help. 7 circles. Nope, I'm going to describe it to you, and we'll just go that way. What if we asked ourselves the question, what if my life were absolutely perfect? If my life were fully built and I was functioning the way that I intended, what would my life be? And that's a big question to ask. And so the one thing suggests that you break that down into 7 compartments. Could be 5, could be 11. There's no secret in 7, but it helps us with our thinking, right? You know, if we stop and say, what would a perfect spiritual life look like for me? Because every one of us is going to wonder why we're here, right? Some people have described themselves, I like this, as spiritual beings having a physical existence here on earth. Physical health. If you don't have your body, where are you going to live? Personal life. What are the things that you do so that you can become the best version of yourself? Those might be habits or hobbies or key relationships, family, friends, colleagues, coaches, mentors. Your job. All of us have a job. That's the specific responsibilities that we have within our organization. Some of us have businesses. Some of us, Keller Williams agents, are very familiar with this concept that we are business owners who happen to be in the real estate of business, right? Even if you're an employee, there's one thing that you can do for your business overall. And finally, your finances, your personal finances, your building wealth, charity, etc. Why don't we stop and take a look at those 7 areas and ask yourself, if my spiritual life were perfect, what would it look like? If my health was perfect, what would it look like? And let's aim for that as our starting point instead of, well, what do I want to improve incrementally this 1 year? And so we get in touch with those 7 areas. A great exercise is, in fact, to create a wheel, a pie, if you will, with 7 slices of pie, each one of the 7 areas, and rank yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 is not very good and 10 is awesome. 10 is the outside of the pie, right? And you just divide it off into sections, and that'll show you where your biggest gaps are. And some people choose to work on the area where they're the weakest. Some choose to work on the area where they're the strongest. It doesn't matter. It's very difficult to work on all 7 areas at the same time. We have a saying in the one thing, the person that chases 2 rabbits catches none. So once you've gotten in touch with what would a perfect life be, then and only then you begin constructing goals. Ultimate someday goals, as though time and money were no object. What would a perfect spiritual life, physical life, personal life, key relationships, job, business, what would perfect finances for me look like? And once you've arrived at that list of someday goals, only then do you work backwards, which is why we call it goal setting to the now. We work back from someday goals to, okay, if that's my ultimate target, perfect, someday, where do I need to be 5 years from now to be on track for my someday goals? And we go through that exact same process. For example, if you said, I want my body mass index to be less than 15%, and you happen to weigh 380 pounds now, you might say that 5 years from now, I better be down to 250. If someday my perfect goal is less than 15%, maybe I better cut it in half to 30% in the next 5 years, as an example. And so we create goals by 5 years from now, exactly the same way. Then we work back again closer to the now, and we say, if perfect someday is my goal, 5 years from now, I know where I need to be on target. Where do I need to be 1 year from now to be on target to having a perfect life in all 7 areas. And we again break down those goals to where do we need to be this year. Once we arrive at that process, then and only then do we move towards, you had Josh on a couple weeks ago talking about 411, 135. These are tools that we use. What I like to do and where the magic was for Carol and I was we each sat down and said, okay, we know where our 1-year goals are by category. Let's put a plan together for the most important personal and the most important professional goal that each of us have. And that's called the GPS, the Goal Priority Strategies. All it is a 1-page business plan saying, if I want to get my A1C below, a certain index, and that's the most important thing, what would be multiple pathways for me to do that? And then under each, really specifically, what would the action steps, the measurable action steps with times be that I could attach to each of those priorities to guarantee that I got it done? That's a GPS. The 411 is simply taking the 1-year, 1-page business plan and breaking it down so that at the beginning of every week, I stopped and asked myself, what are the most important things for me to accomplish this week on my path towards my 1-year goals, on my path to my 5-year goals, on the path to my someday goals? And what I found, Joe, is when people have a firmly held, clear picture of who they could become, that's a far more compelling goal than anything more tactical. What I mean by that is the notion of me becoming a 70-year-old badass is far more compelling than me saying, I really want to increase my unit sales from 52 to 60. That's not very motivating. But when I stop and say, I'd like to buy my kids a house, or I'd like to give them the down payment for a house, or I'd like an audition with the Pope someday, or, I'd like to read all the great books, or I want to get my motorcycle license. Those are all the types of goals that when trouble presents itself, as it will, we're less likely to stop than for a tactical goal that, especially if someone's imposed it upon us. And the best example I can give you of that, I saw, some people know my kid Jack was, long story short, my oldest son Jack ended up getting into the service, and he got hurt a couple times. Got a couple purple hearts. Had a buddy of him killed. He was in Afghanistan in a convoy. He was up in the turret of the Humvee, and they got ambushed from both sides, and a rocket-propelled grenade exploded inside, penetrated the armor, took Jack's leg off and his buddy's arm in the same incident. And it was a bad deal. And I was at Walter Reed. He was there for a couple of years. It was a tough injury. And for the first few months, Jack was surly, depressed. He was sure that girls weren't going to like him again. He wasn't going to be a hero to his big brother. He'd abandoned his guys and super depressed, right? I was in the room when this little short dude and a tall, willowy blonde walked in. The guy said, "Hey, my name's Andrew. Mind if we visit a little bit?" And Andrew got to talking with Jack about, he was an adventure sport guy. He raced motorcycles. He was a pilot. And sure enough, about 15 minutes into the conversation, Andrew lifts up his pant leg and he says, "I'm like you." Sure enough, he's got a prosthetic limb. And Andrew's airplane wasn't a normal airplane. He was the pilot. He was the first Air Force pilot returned to active duty, and his airplane was Air Force Two, the vice president's airplane. And he and his wife left the room, and I could tell in that moment that something different was going on inside my kid. And sure enough, the next day he was down in Walter Reed, down in the gym working out. And within 45 days, the Wounded Warriors had swooped him up, and he came and did the Chicago Marathon on a hand crank bike. And since then, he's gone on to do some amazing things. Point here is that until he saw in Andrew Larake, Lieutenant Colonel Andrew Larake, a living, breathing picture of what was possible for him, he couldn't get out of bed and get motivated, right? But the minute he did, his world changed completely. And I think that is the type of goal that we need to get in touch with for ourselves. And it requires us to get out of our normal routine, right? You can't set goals for your life in the middle of, oh, I got this bad inspection going on. You know, I heard someone yesterday morning talking about, well, Jess talked really beautifully about the need for white space in her schedule. That really resonated with me. I call this professional mulling time. Stopping to consider who I have yet to become, and what do I want to get, and what do I want to do, and who do I want to be, and what do I believe about a higher power, and how much money do I want to make, and what would I do with that? These are all dollar productive activities that aren't normal for us to take on. And so in this goal setting to the now format, I've been given, and we've all been given, a process for simply going through that professional mulling procedure, right? For Carol and I, you know, when we went to the workshop and we heard this process, we each went off by ourselves and went through it, asking ourselves, what would a perfect life for us look like in 5 years? Where would I need to be in 1 year? That was powerful enough. Then to get together as a partnership and compare goals and notes was incredibly, you know, that wow. And then to do it as a couple, saying, as a couple, what's our best perfect life look like? What does our best spiritual life look like? And ultimately that has led to some very rapid progress towards goals for each of us individually and collectively that would not have been possible. And so, yeah.
She was really quickly to speak. Jessica talked about this yesterday, and we were on our 33rd Lunch and Learn. Every single person that has talked, no matter if they're in real estate or they're in mortgage business or their attorney, they've all started with their personal journey, right? And not business. You're doing the same thing spiritually, right? What does my perfect life look like physically? What does it look like? Have you seen that common thread throughout this?
100%. And every single person that's ever worked with or for me, I'm far more interested in their personal goals and their personal life. Business is how we fund that. If the goal of coming here is simply to build a bigger business and that doesn't lead to a bigger life, what's the purpose in that? So for me, there's such a powerful connection between how I'm doing spiritually and physically with how my business is. It doesn't work as well the other way around, for sure. When I'm in a good place here, when I'm in a good place here, there's no doubt my business is going to be better. Yeah.
Thanks for that.
You betcha. So with Carol, imagine, you know, we'd been married at the time 11, 12 years, been together in one form or another 15 or 16. All of a sudden we have to negotiate, right? Stack's Catholic. My wife is here's the deal. She's Catholic and so am I. So I'm going to heaven but she was raised Catholic and I wasn't, and so I'm not as screwed up. So for Carol, the foundation of her spiritual life is to go to Mass, frequently. For me, I could celebrate my belief structure in any number of settings and organizations. I haven't found one that really represents the things that I believe. So for Carol, right? Carol's got go to Mass X number of times in her goals under spiritual. Perfect, right? What am I to do with that if that does not feed my spiritual soul? But if you looked at my 1-year goals, you would see under relationship, go to Mass 27 times. Why? Because that's 51%, right? To me, that's enough. But here I've recognized what's important in my spouse. And so we have found a way for each of us to get what we need by comparing notes. So at the beginning of, at the beginning, every Sunday at 4:00, 4:00 on Sundays, which is typically there's either a golf tournament on, which isn't all that exciting. The Bears have been a lot better lately, but typically Sunday afternoon, Stack and I would both be on the sofa with our laptops on our lap. And that is that point in time. I actually have it scheduled or time blocked. It says 411, Sundays 4 to 5 p.m. Now it only takes me a half an hour. And I'll sit down and I will review my someday goals, my 5-year goals, my 1-year goal, and I'll stop and ask myself at that point in time, what do I need to accomplish this week towards these goals? And I'll actually fill out my 411 in priority order. It's not so critical, the tools themselves, that you stop and ask yourself before you plunge into your busyness, what's the most important things for me to do? And once you make the connection between what you do at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning and your perfect someday life, you're far more likely to follow through on it than if you're making it up on the fly. What else you want to know?
That was very impactful. Thank you very much. So you're talking about goal setting to now, and you went to this retreat. We live the book, we try to live the book, The One Thing, right? It's difficult to do. So Shoes, how is the one thing, concept of you reading that book, let's talk about you personally outside of Carol Stack. Let's talk about your business. How has that actually changed you? And then using these tools, how has it catapulted what you're trying to do? Like, give us some examples on that.
I'll give you some examples. Some of them are a little bit scary, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm now 64 and a half years old. I'm not super young. And we recognize that, I recognize that there was significant wealth building to still be accomplished.
Right.
If I was to begin to come and go as I pleased and to offer my family the lifestyle that I aspired to, I had some work to do. So I had put on my goals, because I was for the most part trading my time as a regional director. I was an employee of Keller Williams, but I really wasn't building equity, and recognized at that retreat with Carol that we needed to begin developing equity. 7 months later, I became the operating principal of Keller Williams Chicago Lincoln Park. That would not have happened unless I had established that as a goal. Here's how it works. Within a month of that goal setting retreat, I said, I need to own a Keller Williams Market Center. And I took that on as a goal, and I started the process of launching a Keller Williams Market Center in the West Loop. I actually moved our regional office out there so I could hang out, get to know the neighborhood, started the process of identifying some people that I'd like to be in business with. And that's that point in time where the opportunity to come to Lincoln Park presented itself. Although I can't say one led to the other, I don't necessarily have evidence. I am convinced that if I had not made the decision, announced it, made a plan, and started executing on the plan, that the universe would not have delivered an even better solution to me. But I'm convinced that that's what happens, is once we put a plan together, that announces to the universe, to everyone else around us, that we've actually made a decision. Until you put a plan together, anything that you say you want to do is just wishful thinking. And I'm convinced my job is to be awake, and that sometimes even better plans present themselves in front of me. And so that's what I'm convinced that that's what happened here. I'm 12 pounds lighter than I was then, right? I got a personal trainer. Levi Kane, thank you. You've changed my life. I recognize that for me, accountability is necessary in virtually every part of my life. I need someone outside myself. And so I went and got some, I went and got some coaches in my life.
How important was it, not only the accountability, how important was it the buy-in of your partner, the buy-in of Carol?
Well, here's how, right? Carol and I are both professional. Carol was she was a superintendent of schools for Pete's sake. Highly professional, turnaround specialist with challenged schools. You know, I've had a good, rich, accomplished career. We've both been goal setters, but we've never done it together, right? And so both of us really did not have knowledge of what drove the other. And it's like when I came to Keller Williams. Carol is very security oriented. I'm more adventure oriented. So I actually took her with me when they made the job offer, because I wanted her to hear the opportunity. And knowing how cautious she was, right? I took her out for dinner and said, well, what do you think? And she said, you've got to do this. Even though it was going to turn our lives upside down, she's like, you've got to do this. Once you have that kind of support under your wings, once I have that kind of support under my wings, I'm unstoppable. If I don't have that kind of support, I'm not. So A, this provided a format for us to get in touch with what was important. B, it also gave us a nice framework for sharing it with one another. And then once you really let your partner know what's important, if you've really got a life partner with you, they're going to support that, not just with love, but also with accountability, right? I haven't worked out very much this week. Stack is all over me.
Good.
Like there's no place to hide. And I need that.
She took you for a walk last night, right?
She saw what a crabby Appleton I was, and she said, we are going for a walk. And we did, and I came back a different person. And that's what a partner can do.
Shoes, you started this by saying, you know, keeping the end in mind, right? You know, where do I want to be? What does my perfect life look like? Whether that's business, financial, you know, personal, spiritual. We live in a world of think big. Is that fair to say? How big, what advice would you give is, how big would you get, what advice would you give on how big should we be thinking? You know, you've been in this business for a long time, right? You surrounded yourself with some of the top talent in the country, in the world, right? We're seeing people in business wise and personal wise, right, succeed at the highest level. So if I'm somebody saying, man, I've never done this, I've never goal set to the now, how big do I need to think?
Cool. I'll give you a comment and an exercise that'll help. The comment is, one of my goals was because I believe I was exposed through the one thing as much as Keller Williams, that I become the average of the 5 people that I hang around with. And so on my someday goals, It is under relationships to have 5 close relationships with wildly successful people. That's someday, right? Then I back up to John Schumacher 1-year goals, to establish one of my most influential individual relationships. You can see how purposeful that is. I'm going to identify and collect one of my 5 this year.
Mm-hmm.
Much higher chance that it's going to happen. And by the way, I do think the people that we're surrounded with is one of the most important things. So, right, we're not used to thinking big, especially when it comes to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So here's an exercise that I was taught by a guy named Dr. Fred Gross. And it's called, we'll call it 10s, 50s, 100s. Again, because my technology isn't necessarily nailing it today, I'll describe it to you and hope that you get it. I want you to imagine for a minute that there is a scale. The scale is joy. And the scale goes from 1 to 100. And I want you to imagine three points on that scale. 10. 10 are things that would bring you a little bit of joy, that wouldn't take much time or energy to do, and that you could do every day, for example. For me, it might be hitting golf balls or reading. It might be going for a walk with my significant other, right? Everyone can come up with 10s easy. Then we move to 50. On the scale of 1 to 100, 50's halfway. 50s would be things that would bring a tremendous amount of joy. Maybe you could do them once a year. They would take some significant planning. They take some resources. Examples of 50s might be, I'm going to go to Ireland and play all the great golf courses. I'm going to go on a cruise around the world. I'm going to, I'm going to come up with a down payment for my kid's first house, whatever that might be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then at the far end of the scale are 100s. 100s are penultimate joy. You don't know exactly how you'd accomplish them. These are things that would bring you as much joy as you can imagine, as if time and money were no object. So examples of that might be space travel, owning my own island, having an audience with the Pope, whatever. Well, I'm going to suggest that you make 3 lists: 10s, 50s, 100s. The 10s, you should plug one of those into your calendar every single day, because it's easy for us to get caught up in this business. It's easy for us to feel like we're really reactive rather than responsive. And if we don't stop and give ourselves a little oxygen every day along the way, we're likely to get sucked down and burnt out by our service to others. The 50s, plug one of those into your calendar this year. The first thing that Stack and I did after the One Thing retreat was we went and plugged in 4 vacations, 1 each quarter. And like a boulder in a stream, right? Once we placed those into our calendars, everything flowed around them, and we've honored them. The year before we started this practice, I took 3 or 4 days of vacation. That's it. That is not honorable. So planning your vacations, planning your planning time, and then time blocking your most important activities, that's the 3 most important scheduling things that you can do.
Shoes, a theme during these 33 Lunch and Learns have, not just by default, have been really kind of mindset, right? We talked about all these successful people. How has goal setting to the now and the one thing concept helped your mindset?
It keeps me focused on who I intend to become and gets me out of, here's what I'm feeling today. Like I saw Jess's I did my very best vision board that I've ever done. I actually put some images in there that mean something to me. And I saw hers yesterday. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. That's where I want to go.
Yeah.
So the one thing helps refocus me, especially at minimum once a week. I also keep a little, I'll show you.
Did you wear a Joe Exotic shirt today, by the way? Oh, all right. Sorry.
It is nice. Well, I was actually in a printing factory and it exploded while I was in it. I'm not sure exactly what this is, but somebody, Hugo Boss, said it was a cool shirt, so I had to have it, right? But this is called a My Page Up, and every morning I've got a little card that I stick in it, and the card basically has 1 to 3 things that I intend to accomplish that day. The important, hey JP, it's not so critical how much we get done. It's how much of the things that matter most we get done. And the one thing about the one thing is, it has changed my thinking. I used to think that having a to-do list with 26 things on it, going in early, staying late, getting all 26 done was my definition of a successful day. Now that's no longer the case. I still maintain that for people in our business, if you'd come in, do the 1, 2, or 3 things that mattered the most, and then got the hell out of the office to be with people in the afternoon, that you'd have a much more successful career than those people that kind of wandered in whenever and just hung out all day to see what showed up. And that's what the one thing does for me, is it keeps bringing me back to what's the one thing, what's the most important thing. And as much as possible, I focus my energy and time on the most important one thing, what we would call the first domino, recognizing that outside of that, things are going to get messy, and you just have to become more comfortable with that.
Shoes, is that your advice to us? What is your advice to us? Is it, how do we find the first domino? Or
well, there's 2 questions to ask yourself. The first one is what we would call the focusing question. What's the one thing that by so doing, what's the one thing you can do that such by doing will make everything easier or unnecessary, right? If I was a real estate agent and I came in, and whether it was past clients or expired listings, if I came in and made lead generating my one thing, and I did that day in and day out, I'd have a hell of a real estate career.
yeah. Yep.
You know, so that's number 1. Number 2 is go as small as you can. How small can you go? This is where the 66-day challenge, right? For me, the way I used to set physical goals, I'd say, well, I'm gonna do a marathon. I'm gonna do a triathlon, right? And as I get older and older, it's a little bit like I'm not Jordan Pyle, right? Here's what I learned in Atomic Habits. You break these things down to the smallest possible dimension, and they become more likely to establish as habits. It's not about willpower. It's just having enough willpower to establish the habit. So, for example, for my physical being, right? It finally got to the point where I had a goal, and it wasn't to work out for an hour a day. It wasn't to ride 20 miles like you did this morning, or to swim for half an hour. It was to step outside my condo door with my workout clothes on. And I took that on as a 66-day challenge. You know, almost every time that I do that, I'm going to work out. And that's how it is. Any habit where you're looking for your first domino, you're looking for that one thing that's so simple that you can and are highly likely to do it. And that by doing it, bing, it will knock over inevitably something else. So I'm going to say success is sequential, not simultaneous. So spend more time figuring out what that lead domino is, what that first habit is that you need to acquire than to try to do everything at once.
That's great advice, Shoes. How do people get a hold of you if they want to say, hey, Shoes, help me out?
And I'd be thrilled to do that, whether it's questions about the one thing or anything. We actually have an entire community. You can go to shoes@kw.com. That's probably the easiest.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Cool. Shoes, we really appreciate your time today. Hey, what did everyone think? Can we get a thumbs up, or can we get a applause, or what do we got? What do we got? There it is. Some good applauses. Great job. Great job, Shoes. You got Josh Weinberg dancing as well too. So you did awesome, guys. Hey guys, as we know, for our Keller Williams family, tomorrow is Red Day. So we are going to take a break from our businesses and dive into helping our community. So we will not be doing a lunch and learn. And on Friday, Coach K, Kara Belt, is going to be leading us in a lunch and learn on really kind of finding your why. So it's going to be an impactful Friday as well. So thanks for being here, guys. It was a great session. Shoes, thank you so much. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we will get through this. Cheers, guys.
Love you guys. Let's go.
Rock and roll.